Will I be done with the child era by the end of this video? Who knows? Hey everybody, and welcome back to Our Life. We're going through all the various moments in our first time period, the childhood time period, and we've already done shopping and grown up. Now we are on to Long Day. It was another scorching summer day, the kind where no sooner had you finished up one cup of water, you were already filling it up again. Everyone else had something on. What? Everyone else had something on. So that afternoon, it was just you. Oh, okay. They were doing things. Okay. So that afternoon, it was just you and Shiloh. This didn't happen much, especially since Cove had arrived. Without Lizzie around, Shiloh looked to you for all the answers. It made you feel... I don't know. Like... Depending, you eventually kind of, like, you warm up to it. I found that as I got a little bit older, having the younger kids ask me things, I started to realize, oh, they're just looking for some guidance, some help, and like I would want that, so why wouldn't I give it to them? So I think I'm pleased. You might not be in the double digits like your sister, but he was only 7 and I'm 8. Being the oldest and getting to be the leader was a nice change of pace. You drained yet another drink and frowned at the empty vessel. Your thirst was gone, but you still craved something icy cold and refreshing, something sweet, something like... oh, you know it's an ice cream sandwich. You craved soft ice cream sandwich between 2 cookies. Oh, poetic. There was nothing like that to be found at home. You knew that without needing to look. You knew that without needing to look. Oh my god. Your mom didn't keep sweets in the house. What? Monsters. Outside, there were plenty of places where such goodies could be obtained, but they were shops and demanded payment in exchange for their products. I think I'm just gonna talk it out. Talk to the air. I want an ice cream sandwich. Shiloh, who had been draped over the sofa, perked up. That sounds good. We don't have anything like that in the house, and I don't have any money. Oh, let me check if I have any. Shiloh rummaged in his backpack and proudly produced an assortment of coins, plus 1 stray button. You set the button aside and counted the coins in neat piles. Just over $1. You announced this to Shiloh. He had almost certainly come to the same conclusion, but he'd been watching you expectantly. It's a start. Shiloh beamed at you. We'll need to find some more. Okay. The 2 of you lifted couch cushions, stuck tiny hands down deep crevices in the couch and under furniture, and scoured the back of drawers. Most of what you found was useless or gross: bent paper clips, fluffy wisps of dust or sandy crumbs. But every so often, one of you would strike silver or bronze and add it to the growing pile of coins. Dusty and disheveled from checking every room and squinting into every tiny nook, the 2 of you finished pooling your finds. Shiloh held his breath as you counted the coins once again. $2.53 and 2 buttons. You didn't know when the second button had decided to join the party, but you were too pleased with your successful haul to throw it out. Is that enough? You figured he knew the answer, but you appreciated him recognizing your authority on financial and ice cream matters. You straightened up before making your pronouncement. Yeah, we've got enough. You could now afford something at the shops. Just one thing. but that was infinitely better than none. Shiloh clapped his hands. Yay! The two of you dashed outside. The promise of sugar buoyed you onto your destination where, breathless but happy, you stared at the overwhelming number of options. You knew what you wanted, but it wasn't just you who had contributed to the funds to get the treat. He seemed to notice your pause. Aren't you getting an ice cream sandwich? Shiloh asked as though he was entirely separate from the decision, rather than someone who with a stake in the outcome. Do you mind? Shiloh cocked his head to the side. It was your idea. You should choose. You went ahead and got what you wanted originally. Are you really sure it's okay? You tried to get something you both wanted anyway. That one. It wasn't fair for you to be the only one to decide when he'd been a main factor in making this happen. Some of the money came directly from his backpack. What do you like? All of them. They're so good. You pressed further. But what do you really like? Popsicles or ice creams? Which is your favorite? Oh, it's so hard to pick. I don't know. Frustrated, you cut to the heart of the matter. You want me to choose? Yeah. And that was that. You got the dessert you wanted originally and hoped Shiloh would actually like it too. Finally, the reward for all your hard work was in your hands. You bit the ice cream sandwich. Chewy chocolate biscuit complemented the creamy vanilla ice cream inside. You held it out to Shiloh so he could take a turn. He shook his head. Child, no. He didn't want any? After everything he did to help get it? That was weird. I mean... I'm gonna try to include you. Even if Shiloh said it was okay, every story you'd ever seen on TV or read in a book said that sharing was caring. You stood your ground even as the treat started to trickle dangerously toward your fingers. It's only fair that you have some. We both bought it. But you want it more than I do, and getting to play was a lot of fun already. So you can have it. That's more fair. You held it out to him. I want you to have some even more than I want to finish it. So eat your part. Relenting, Shiloh did the thing. He did. He ate his part. It's really good. Thank you. You smiled, pleased with your good deed. You picked the best one. Did he mean that? Shiloh was always nice no matter what happened. Even if he hated it, you knew he wouldn't say so. Maybe he thought it was gross, and that's the real reason why he didn't want to take some. You had no idea. You studied him and ate a little more. He had every appearance of enjoying himself. Still, weird. The two of you began to head back home as he ate. You walked side by side on the shore in silence, but your thoughts kept drifting back to the boy beside you. Why didn't he speak up for himself? It was almost as if Shiloh didn't know how to say what he felt, or was too afraid to. You figured that was his problem and didn't care. Are you scared of me? I mean, dude, I don't think he would be around if he was scared of you. Are we friends? Shiloh opened his eyes wide, seemingly caught off guard by the blunt question. Yeah, I think so. He says that, but friends should be able to talk to each other about being scared. If Shiloh wouldn't do that, were you even really friends at all? He rubbed his hands together nervously over your non-reaction. You weren't sure how sorry he could be without knowing what he's even apologizing for, but you shook your head. He didn't do anything. It was true. Shiloh hadn't done something mean. He'd gotten out of his way to make you happy. He'd gone out of his way to make you happy. That didn't seem like it should be a bad thing, yet it bothered you. I just don't know if you like me. It's like it doesn't matter what I do. You're gonna act the same. I could be anybody and you wouldn't care. No, I like you. I really, really like you, Franklin. I want to be friends. Okay. You smiled hesitantly at him, and his fidgeting ceased. Even though you weren't sure if you believed him, this was only making things worse. You decided that maybe there were all types of friends. If Shiloh wasn't able to do things differently, this would have to be all right. Shiloh made you unsure about setting a label on the experience of spending the afternoon with just him. There had been good times and there had been confusing ones. You were positive of one thing at least. The treat was delicious and that was nice. The sun was low on the horizon as you returned to the neighborhood. There you spotted two very familiar figures up ahead. Lizzie and Cove. You opened your mouth to make your presence known to them just as you saw the tears on Cove's face. Lizzie, what are you doing? Leave my boy alone. You walked straight over, Shiloh at your heels. Once there, you... I mean, I quite literally just did that. Don't assume. Don't assume. Oh, I rewound apparently. I'm going to carefully ask about what happened. Without a time machine, the only way you were going to find out was by asking the witnesses. Lizzie might have done something, but she could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, or even come to Cove's aid. You wanted to hear the story. Cove, what happened?
Franklin.
I got yelled at. Oh. He took a deep, steadying breath. Some grandparents got mad at me. Aw, sorry. Lizzie jerked her head in the direction of a nearby house. Your heart sunk. You knew exactly what had happened. Every year, the same mean old couple rented out that condo for the summer. You, Lizzie, and Shiloh knew to stay away from them, but Cove couldn't have. They're like that with everyone. Even your mom struggled to find anything nice to say about them, but the elderly pair particularly took offense to kids. It didn't matter if they were really nice like Cove. Yeah, Lizzie said. Wow. Okay. I don't know why I went straight to narration when he said Lizzie said. Yeah, Lizzie said. It didn't matter if they were really nice like Cove. Yeah, Lizzie said. Lizzie drew herself up at that. She looked pointedly in your direction. Uh-huh. I was helping. That's cool. Is there anything I can do? No, I'm just gonna stay away. Or you could teach them a lesson. There was a devilish glint in her eyes. What? You should ding-dong ditch them. Go ring the doorbell and run. It'll be great, because they're slow. They'll never catch you. That's dumb. I don't want to go near them ever again.
You're just saying that because you're a chicken.
The occasional line that's been read is really funny to me. Cove glared, but didn't take the bait. Lizzie turned to you. You're not a chicken, are you? I'm with Cove here. You looked at the house. Behind those closed doors lurked two beings, rich in years, but poor in patience. Maybe they deserved retaliation. Maybe they didn't. But that punishment wouldn't be coming from you. It was safer to stay away from them, especially since Cove took their outbursts to heart. Yeah, let's not make things worse on the boy. I'm not doing it either. Another chicken for the coop. This is a hen house. No. If we're chickens, you're a lizard, Lizzie. She wagged her tongue at his face. Still better than a bird brain. Chicken. The condo door opened, revealing one of the two culprits. The old man's wizened face was set in a scowl, which was to say he looked exactly like he always did when you saw him. Maybe that was his normal face. What are you kids doing loitering outside my house? Maybe he was always just in a terrible mood. Nothing. He repeated the word as if it was the greatest crime anyone could commit. Nothing good, more like get lost. It wasn't as if he owned the space outside the house, but Cove's eyes, still red from his earlier tears, were wide, and you thought it would be best to heed the old man's command. Lizzie took off with Shiloh immediately trailing after her without so much as a glance back in your direction. So much for your friendship. Oh. You waved your arm at Cove, summoning him to follow you, and ran after Lizzie. The old man's hollers propelled you all from the street to the sanctity of the hill. Only once you were safe did you notice the stitch in your chest and the ache of your legs. Wow, you ran, kid. Okay. You flopped down, the blades of grass tickling your face. Lizzie, who had taken the lead in the end, was already lazing on the ground. Four of you took a moment to catch your breath and enjoy the feeling of cool grass against your skin.
Cove.
Hey, Cove. Cove lifted his head. I told you there were mean grandparents around here. Cove rolled his eyes, then decided this wasn't dismissive enough and rolled his whole body away from your sister. Lizzie chose to ignore his response and started chatting to Shiloh, who eagerly joined in the conversation. In the back of your mind, you knew you'd be second fiddle again to Shiloh once Lizzie came around. It always went like that. And it was fine, you thought. You still felt a little sad after how much time you spent together today. And it was always annoying. It was fine. Shiloh could prefer Lizzie as much as he wanted to. There were other things to attend to anyway. You wriggled closer to Cove. He had calmed down for the most part and was inspecting a flower. His fingers pinched the stem and tilted the white petals towards him. That's a poppy. Cove glanced at you in acknowledgement, then back to the flower. And the type of poppies on this hill have the name white linen poppy, Mom told me. He quirked a smile. That's funny. He ran a finger around the edges of the petals. It doesn't feel like cloth. You need a lot of them to make anything. He nodded and released the delicate plant. Evaluation complete. This is my favorite kind of flower, but I didn't know what it was called. Thanks. There's so many choices. uh, 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 listen. Type your own answer. To God, holy mother of, we're gonna go with just good old, yeah. You know what? I feel like it's cute. It's the flowers that were around them the first time they met. We're gonna say that this is our favorite kind of flower too. Cove's smile widened as he looked at you. Cool. Oh, sweet boy. You moved onto your back with a smile and looked at the darkening sky. The blanket of clouds reminded you of a thick throw you okay. A throw is in like a blanket of a thick throw you curled under on cold rainy days. You wondered if the clouds would be as soft. They lazily floated on by, splitting from each other, merging and morphing into new shapes. You saw cloud shapes. We're gonna go with a good old dolphin, yo. Dolphins for days. Dolphins everywhere in this game. You saw a dolphin leaping through the sky. You nudged Cove and pointed to it. Look, a dolphin. Cove joined you in gazing skywards. Yeah, I see it. Really? No, but I like dolphins. Hey! He chuckled at your reaction. Oh, that was more of an offended hey. Hey. He chuckled at your reaction. All the sun's light faded from the sky and the moon rose higher. Lizzie got to her feet, dusting strands of grass from her bare legs, and surveyed her surroundings. The ocean, visible from the crest of the hill, beckoned with every sweep of the tide. Let's go to the beach! There was no argument from the other two. Shiloh was still Shiloh, and Cove would never say no to going to the shore. He was a child of the sea. You were too tired to argue. We're too tired to argue. It had been a long, hot day. You weren't bothered about going there, but you would rather do that than make a scene. You stepped onto the sand for the second time that day, but it felt different at night. The beach was nearly quiet at this hour. Abandoned sand castles and footsteps in the sand, too big to belong to any of you, were the only indications of how busy it had been only hours earlier. 4 of you kicked shoes off and removed socks and walked along the water's edge. The waves tickled your feet. I wonder what would happen if you tried to take a bath in the ocean. With shampoo and everything. That would be bad for the fish.
Jeez.
I didn't say anyone would do it. Jeez. You don't have to be so serious about everything. God. You're the one who asked me what would happen. That is what would happen. It'd hurt the fishes. The fishes. Fish. I like bubble baths at home. They're a lot of fun. Me too. Bubble baths are luxurious. You've never heard Lizzie use that word before? Mommy loves to have bubbles in her bath. She'll turn the lights off and have candles. I'm gonna do that next time. Hey, when's your mom coming to pick you up anyway? Not for a while. She's busy. What about your dad? How come you never talk about him? Nobody does. Don't you know you're not supposed to ask something like that? Why would somebody want to talk about something they never talk about? You kept your eyes on the ground, watching your toes get swallowed by the waves. Even if Shiloh never seemed upset when this topic came up, it made you feel awkward just for having both of your moms. It's okay. I'm like Lizzie and Franklin. I don't have a dad. But I don't have two moms. I just have one. She's really great. Oh, sorry. I only have one now too. My mom isn't here. She's back home. It's just my dad with me.
Sorry.
Aw, I never had a dad or anything, yeah, so I don't feel bad. Really sad that your mom is gone. Cove nodded. You joked about Shiloh's mom getting together with Cove's dad. Be awkward, kid. Even if they're all different, our parents are good in their own ways. No. No. You didn't say anything. Not gonna say anything. You couldn't come up with something you thought would make the conversation any less awkward, so you kept quiet. It was safer that way. The silence broke with a splash as Lizzie kicked in your direction. Cold water and sodden sand splattered against your legs. Lizzie giggled, foot still outstretched from the kick. Cove joined in, striking the incoming waves to make a splash of his own. Shiloh scurried out of Cove's spray zone with a grin. You retaliate! You use your foot to smack the water pulling around you, sending an arc of sea foam flying back onto your sister. You laughed as she spluttered. Some of the salty seawater having landed in her mouth, she spat it out. Yuck. Lizzie chased you, intent on revenge. I was getting... Yep, the cycle continues. You dashed up and down the coast, taking it in turns to be the predator and the prey, as well as joining forces to take down Shiloh or Cove. Alliances were silently forged and wordlessly broken. Everything was fair game in war. Ah! Shiloh's brief exclamation was drowned out by the biggest splash yet, caused by him falling face first onto the ground. That would have been bad enough without the wave that followed, cascading over his prone body. Shiloh sat up, shaking his head like a dog, coming in from the rain, as you all hurried over to check on him. His hair was plastered to his head, and his soaked clothes clung. If there was any part of him that was still dry, you couldn't see it. That was crazy. Are you okay? Yeah, my foot got stuck and I fell over.
You Dumbo.
Way to go, Shiloh, you Dumbo. I'm gonna offer him some help up. Shiloh didn't take your outstretched hand. After a moment, you dropped it. Lizzie was too busy snickering to notice and held her hand out to Shiloh too. He reached over and took it. Slowly, he started to pull himself from the ground. Ow! Ow! Shiloh! That hurts! Then he slipped on the slick sand, dragging him and Lizzie down, and just in time for another wave to hit. The water rolled over them.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. What were the odds of that happening twice in a row? You thought they must be low, but there's no way Shiloh would do something like that on purpose and then pretend it was an accident, especially not to Lizzie. Even if your relationship with Shiloh felt unclear, he did at least like her a lot. Lizzie was his favorite, right? Smiling boldly, Lizzie extracted herself from the ground and wiped a streak of sand off her cheek. She didn't intend to let this embarrass her. Shiloh got up again as well, this time without incident. He still looked like a drowned puppy, but that didn't stop Cove laughing at the two of them. With that, it was time to call it a day. The four of you drudgingly made your way back home, leaving a trail of wet footsteps and sand in your wake as damp clothes weighed the group down. Your moms were outside, chatting to Cove's dad. We're back! Your mom's faces fell as they took in the state of you were all in. ranging from messy to soaked.
Now,
Elizabeth, is that all you have to say for yourself? You brought half the beach back with you. They certainly did. What's Marigold going to do when she comes to get Shiloh? Is that how you want him to be for the long drive home? Cold and filthy? Lizzie's expression turned sulky over the scolding. Being the oldest could be fun, but it also meant that she was the first to get in trouble when something went wrong. Mr. Holden, on the other hand, chuckled as he ruffled Cove's matted hair. You been out making memories, bucko? I'm glad you had a good time with your friends. Cove used his slightly moist cast arm to push his dad off. Mr. Holden's eyes widened when he noticed even that had gotten wet. Now he was worried too. I think they could have found a less risky way to spend time and had just as much fun. That might be right. Kids, what can you do? Come on, Cove, let's go get you cleaned up and dried off. We wouldn't want that cast to have to be reset. Cove winced at the thought. Okay. That a boy. Mr. Holden casually bent down and plucked Cove up off the ground, ultimately holding Cove against his chest. Sand was already transferring from Cove onto him, but that didn't seem to bother Mr. Holden. Cove protested being carried, but only got a reassuring pat on the back for his trouble.
take care.
Good night, Cove. Thank you for the talk, Cliff. Night, Deep family, and Shiloh too. Resigned to his fate, Cove twisted his body in his dad's arms in order to turn around and wave goodbye. Smiling, you waved back. Good night.
Fine.
Well, we'd better do what we can to fix you guys up too. Come on, everybody inside. I want you to march straight to the downstairs bathroom. Yes, Mom. Okay, Lizzie's mom. Don't worry about stopping to wipe your feet on the mat this time. That won't do much good tonight. Sitting on an old beach towel your mommy had found, you waited in the hall. Until you were less sandy, you weren't allowed to go to your room or walk around the house. But you did get to eat a sandwich for dinner. It felt like an indoor picnic. It had been decided that Shiloh would wash first and borrow some of your clothes. He was already finished and packed away in his mom's car. Miss Fields had come to collect him a little while ago. It was a bit of a funny experience seeing him without that hat on for once. Lizzie, being much more soaked than you, got to go in the tub next. It wasn't a bubble bath as she had hoped. This was a no fun allowed cleanup session. At least that's what she claimed. Not much longer, it would be your turn. When the bath was done, you'd have to go right to bed. After a day like this, though, you were glad they weren't going to be any further events. Drifting off to sleep sounded like a great idea. Boy, howdy! When you said long day, you meant it. That section was long. Okay, let's go. Sandcastles. Cove wasn't able to do many things that summer. When you, him, and Shiloh sat out on the shoreline one bright morning, you could tell he wanted to be in the water. There was no way he'd be swimming anytime soon. Not with his cast. Oh, and he loves the beach! No! That's so sad. The waves washed a single shell to the shore, glittering and blue. Another reminder of the places he couldn't go. From what you'd heard about Cove's old life so far, in tiny pieces and fragments, you could tell he'd do anything to be able to get the cast off. Like, make a pact with a witch or something, just to get it off his arm. You thought about how his summer last year must have been totally different from this, with his old home and his mom and dad. But now he was here with you and Shiloh and Lizzie and everyone else, and he couldn't even go in the sea. This town wasn't bad. It had all your favorite things in it. But sitting there on the same beach you'd grown up on, you could understand that not everybody else felt the same way about Sunset Bird as you did. You watched him from the corner of your eye quietly, and he finally said aloud what you had been pondering. I wish I could go in. The water? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You're gonna be able to do it soon. Cove only sighed in response. Apparently, soon wasn't soon enough. It's so pretty. The ocean. Mm-hmm. And huge. There could be anything out there, like mermaids. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Swimming might be fun if we could. But it's not like there's anything we can do about it. Obviously not interested in hearing much more of your input on the situation, Cove turned back to the water. But as he looked away, something about Shiloh's slow, careful movements caught his eye. Hey, are you building a sandcastle? Sort of. I was only playing around while you were talking. I'm listening. Maybe I could too. I've only made big piles before. It's really nothing special. I'm sure you'd be good at it right away. Well, how do you do it then? Shiloh's cheeks lit up. You could tell he was a little bit uncomfortable to have Cove's expectant stare on him. I'll play too. There's nothing else to do. I've never really made one before. Okay. He put his hands back to his seashells and sand and nodded. I don't do a lot. Here's how I like to get a house started. Shiloh, focusing more intently than you'd ever seen him, guided the two of you through this process. It didn't take long for the three of you to each have humble structures prepared. That's all, kind of. You can do anything now. Like, make it bigger, add some seashells, carve a pretty pattern. I bet you'll have great ideas.
Okay.
I'm gonna make it bigger. Mine is gonna be a real castle. Cool. This is gonna be a house. Looking at the base of your sandcastle you decided to make. I'm gonna be different. A mansion. Looking at the base of your sandcastle, you decided to do what Lizzie would do and design a mansion. The better part of the next hour was spent focusing on your work. Boys were the same. Even Shiloh didn't sneak as many peeks at everyone else as he usually did. You finished shaping before either of them did, glancing up from what you'd built. It seems you got done so fast because they already searched around for extra decorations. Shiloh had grabbed most of the really interesting stuff, and Cove had a lot of the shells, but there were still options. The first thing you reached for was oh, you gotta go with the green piece of sea glass. Oh yeah. It was the best fit for your mansion, you decided. It was see-through and sparkly. So you put it in a funny place where you'd take a second look to see it. Pleased with your results, you finally took a proper look around that wasn't focused on the sand itself. Both Cove and Shiloh seemed super immersed still, you knew you could probably sneak a peek at either one's work. You know I'm gonna check out Cove's sandcastle. The castle Cove had built looked surprisingly tidy, especially for someone in a cast. He must have worked really hard. He wasn't even finished digging the huge gaping moat in front, but it was already enormous. You got the sense from the enthusiasm he was digging what the doctor was probably going to find. You got from the enthusiasm he was digging with that the doctor was probably going to find a bunch of sand when he finally removed the pink plaster. The silence was then broken. What's on the top of yours, Shiloh? You peeked closer and discovered something shiny sticking out of Shiloh's sand chimney. Oh, it's just a gum wrapper. It looks like smoke.
Neat.
It's good. That's smart. You should be an architect. Be an architect, kid. You'd be good at it, Shiloh. Shiloh smiled without a word. And that was that for the current topic. Franklin, can I see what you did? Sure. He scooted just a bit nearer and began surveying your work. All you really knew about mansions was that they were supposed to be big, so you'd gone really big. It was the size of the country club that Lizzie played golf at compared to Cove and Shiloh's buildings. Probably even bigger. Shiloh quickly decided to jump in the new conversation. Hey Franklin, what did you do? This is my mansion. Cove scowled for a moment. Apparently the anger was actually still there after his argument with Lizzie more than a week ago. It looks great. Your house is so big. It's not a big house. It's a mansion. I guess mansions are just really big houses. Let's see. I'm just gonna thank him. You're welcome. I don't think that's the same as a house. Huh? Is being a house bad?
No.
No, but we each made our own place. Nobody is the same. I think we are. Cove raised an eyebrow at that. If something is the only one of that thing, that makes it special. Yeah, for sandcastles and stuff. People too. My dad always says how everybody is their own man, a real individual. I don't think I'm very special.
Why?
Why not? Nobody else is you. Shiloh simply shook his head. I'm not different. A beat passed between the two. Cove then looked down at his own work again. Okay. He didn't seem to be bothered leaving the disagreement hanging there. Cove had other things on his mind. My dad tried to get me to make sandcastles the first time we came to this beach. I didn't want to. Cove trailed off again. There was another moment of silence. Shiloh shifted and opened his mouth to say something, but Cove spoke up before he could. You didn't think he noticed that Shiloh was going to talk. Hey, do you know what happened when your moms met my dad, Franklin? You waited to see if Shiloh would say what he wanted to. When he didn't, you considered Cove's question. I wasn't there. They didn't tell me. I just remember what happened when I met your dad. Mr. Holden had been a weird stranger then. Well, he was still kind of strange. No other parent acted like him, but you knew him better at this point. Now that you thought about it, it made a lot of sense that Cove's dad talked to him about people being unique. You were pulled from your thoughts when Cove continued. Oh, well, I was there. I don't think my mom has met your dad. Oh, wait, no. I don't think your mom has met my dad. There we go. It's Shiloh. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she hasn't. Franklin's parents and my dad met the same day I met him. I'm going to say what happened. Shiloh frowned to himself, ducking his head. His hat cast a shadow over his face. You could still see he was upset about not being included in Cove's choice of topic. Aw. That was kind of boring for him. Though giving people their own turn to say the things they want is important too. Listen, Shiloh, this literally started because Cove was like, hey, let's talk about this subject. Don't butt in and be like, let me immediately say something else. Let Cove say what he's gonna say. All right. Shiloh could talk about stuff after Cove had a chance to share what he planned on. When we moved here, we didn't bring a lot of things with us. Only some of the stuff that would fit in Dad's car. We didn't even get a moving truck. I sat in there while Dad brought it all inside. I didn't want to get out because I knew Dad would make me look around the new house. I really didn't want to do that. His lips twisted in a frown as he recalled that. Then I saw your moms. They were in a car too and stopped at your house. I guess they were coming back from somewhere or something. My dad noticed. He waved his hand, then went over to the front of your house where he started talking to them. I don't know what they said. I couldn't hear it. But he couldn't see me anymore since he was looking the other way. So I opened the car door and left. I wanted to get away and went behind the houses. I found those hills there. The ones where we met for the first time. Cave nodded, then stared at you. You stared back. He didn't go on to say anything more. Aren't you gonna finish the story? Cove's brow wrinkled, like he didn't understand why you were surprised. That's all that happened. Why did you want to tell the story if nothing happened? You really gotta get better at telling stories. Oh God, there's so many good options here. I'm gonna, you know what? Maybe we can influence Cove into becoming a writer or something. You really got to get better at telling stories. Cove didn't seem to accept the critique whatsoever. Listen, there was no dramatic structure. But that was how our parents met. I didn't make the story up. True stories can be good. That isn't the problem. Shiloh's mouth twisted in a scowl of disbelief, but he said nothing. Why'd you bring that up anyway? There was a slight shrug on Cove's shoulders. I was thinking about it because of the sandcastle. It made me remember when I moved to here. Dad showed me the beach first before we went back to the car to unpack. He was really excited about it for some reason. Cove's brows furrowed a little more as he quietly raked his hands through the sand. I get it. You thought maybe Mr. Holden wasn't that excited about the beach, and was instead hoping Cove might be. But the line of conversation had come to its end when even Cove was done with it. Some other topic had popped into his head. Shiloh, fidgeting uncomfortably in the sand, had made Cove aware of his presence again. They looked at each other, and you could only wonder what this might be about. Hey, Shiloh. Yeah? Why are you always turning so red, even when nothing is happening? Clearly stated, he jerked back, Neither you or Shiloh had expected that to be how he got included into the conversation again. I don't know, I guess. Okay, it's kind of weird. Shiloh's eyes were wide with embarrassment, and his lips twitched, and he was blushing even harder than before. Maybe it wasn't only his. Perhaps it was simply the last straw, but it was a big deal to Shiloh. A huge deal. He didn't just look sad, he seemed almost panicked. You weren't sure if he was about to cry or run away or what, but you soon got an answer. Why do you wear glasses? Most kids don't wear glasses, and nobody is named Cove. Who asked you to come? It was probably just your dad bugging Franklin's family some more because you don't have anyone else who'll ever play with you. Cove blinked. The tension on the beach was suddenly uncomfortable in a way you didn't know how to laugh off. It didn't seem like the kind of thing he'd get upset about, though you hadn't ever known what kind of thing would bother Shiloh. I'm sorry. Me too, I was just wondering. None of these options are good. Let's build another sandcastle. The day is gonna be over soon. Franklin, you're right. The sun is going down so fast. You all went back to making more sand buildings. Okay, that worked. But the whole mood had changed. Shiloh's cheeriness was clearly gone, and Cove looked as confused as ever about why the other boy had blown up. The air stayed uncomfortable the rest of the afternoon, right up to the moment that Shiloh's mom appeared at the beach to take him home. At least you tried something to resolve it, though, and it seemed like it had helped. Even though Shiloh's smile when he said goodbye to Cove wavered, it stayed as bright as ever for you. That had to count for something. But with Shiloh gone and the sun going down, you knew it was time for you and Cove to head to your own houses. The two of you trailed out of the park together toward the neighborhood. The walk home was quiet. You passed by by familiar landmarks, shoes thumping against the sidewalk in near perfect unison. Cove was clearly caught up in thinking about something. You asked Cove what he's thinking. Something was definitely up, but you chose to reach out to him and ask. Hey, Cove, is everything okay? You're making a funny face. Oh, I was just wondering. Cove fell silent again. For a few more seconds, then sighed. Why'd Shiloh act like that? When I said he was all red a lot. You shouldn't make fun of him. I don't know, it's a Shiloh. He gets embarrassed. He gets embarrassed. Embarrassed? But I didn't say anything that bad. It might have upset him anyway. I guess I can get it. Why he would do that. Sometimes I get really mad too. Despite seemingly coming to a conclusion, Cove's mood was still sour. Hey, Franklin? Was Shiloh telling the truth? Huh? His gaze left yours as he dug the sole of his shoe into the ground. He looked oddly vulnerable for a second. Does my dad make you hang out with me? I know he talks to your moms about that a lot. An uncomfortable weight settled in your chest at the question. You liked spending time with Cove. You didn't even have to think hard about it. You knew you did. But you couldn't help feeling guilty. Cove still didn't know what happened when you met Mr. Holden. Nobody's making me spend time with you. Your dad does do stuff so you'll hang out with my family, but Shiloh shouldn't have said that. You decided to tell him about his dad offered you money. But I didn't take it. I feel like I could be like, he offered me money. I didn't take it. I've been hanging out with you because you're cool. But I feel like it also could. Why make a decision when you could just save? Okay, if this goes really bad, we're going back. I'm going to tell him the truth. His dad offered me money. Well, remember how you talked about your parents, how our parents met, and I didn't know what happened? Yeah? I kind of had something happen that you don't know about when I met your dad. As you struggled to find the right words, Cove looked at you passively. You wanted to turn away, but you kept your eyes on him as you spoke. I was walking home and your dad was sitting in front of the house. It must have been after you ran away. My moms weren't here either. I think they were looking for you. Your dad saw me and got up and came over. Mr. Holden told me that he just moved into the house next to mine. Cove was still listening. His expression was as plain as before. You paused for a moment, wondering if you should really keep going. I'm telling him the full story, baby. Even if it was supposed to be a secret, you thought Cove should still know. Your dad thought you might be lonely here, so he wanted me to be your friend. He said he'd give me $20 if I did. Cove was so still. You thought he hadn't heard you. Then his eyes widened, his mouth fell open, but no sound left him. Silence stretched between you two, and so tense that it was almost intangible. It was almost tangible. You shifted from one foot to another, and your hands tensed up. Please say something. Instead of speaking, he closed his mouth. His brow bent up, crinkling his forehead. He looked more sad than surprised now. He was going to cry. You were certain of it. I didn't take it. The money. I didn't want it. Honest. Cove raised his hands and brought them up under his glasses, his fingers pressed over his eyes, hiding them from your sight. Oh, no. No, my baby. No. Then right in the middle of the street, the tears began to fall. His shoulders shook with the force of his sobs. You could glimpse wetness through the cracks of his fingers slipping down his cheeks. Cove, it's okay. You place a hand on his head? No. Touch his shoulder. Awkwardly, you reached over and rested a hand on his shoulder. The Cove shook his body from side to side, rejecting your presence.
No.
Go away. You flinched at the shout. As you stood there, listening to him cry, you felt concerned for him. You didn't want Cove to be this upset. You just wanted to be honest. Cove continued to weep with his face covered by his hands. Worse, his voice raised in volume. You were frozen in place. The situation was awful, and you kept feeling worse every second. I want to cry. Oh, I'm gonna hug him. You stepped up and tried to wrap your arms around him in a hug. Cove squirmed away from you again, though ducking his head. It was a full rejection. Oh, you heard a door opening and you flinched, expecting to see one of the mean old grandparents themselves to yell at you. At this hour, most people weren't around, either because they were working or down in the town. but the grandparents rarely left the house, except to complain about children making noise in the street. Was that? Ugh. You didn't want to have to deal with that right now. You tried to come up with something you could do for him, for the situation, for anything. But the door that stood open now didn't belong to the grandparents. To your utter surprise and relief, it was Cove's own. His dad was already home. As he peeked out his door, Mr. Holden momentarily looked unsure. Perhaps he had suspicions on the noise outside, but wasn't entirely positive. Though a kid crying is pretty distinct, and there aren't a lot of kids. Maybe he didn't want to believe something might be wrong with his son. His face fell as he spotted the source of the commotion. It was pained and scared, and it reminded you of the one he'd worn the first night you'd met Cove. Mr. Holden didn't want to go down the steps in front of the house. He just jumped right over them and stumbled into a run. He skidded to a stop before Cove, bent down on one knee, and then solidly cupped Cove's teary face with his hands. What's wrong? Are you hurt anywhere? Cove continued to cry, unable or unwilling to cough out an explanation. Not taking his hands from Cove, Mr. Holden turned to you for explanation, his eyes wide and imploring. He was asking if you made me hang out with him. You did, so I told Cove how you wanted to give me money to be his friend. Ooh. Ooh. As you spoke, Mr. Holden's chest rose while he inhaled a deep, shaky breath, culminating in a gasp at your final words. Why would you? He clamped his mouth shut, shaking his head. He faced his crying son again. No, it's my fault. I shouldn't have done something like that in the first place. He cast his eyes down, sighing. When he next spoke, it wasn't part of a conversation anymore. It was barely loud enough for you to catch his words. Franklin's only a kid. Tears were still streaming down Cove's face. Smiling sadly, Mr. Holden wiped Cove's cheek with a thumb. He furrowed his brows and looked at the ground. When he next glanced up, his mouth was wet. His mouth was set with determination. Mr. Holden finally took his hands off Cove. He reached for his wallet. Confused, you stared at the little rectangle that all adults seemed to carry in some shape or form. It had been the source of all these problems. You were sure that Cove wouldn't want to be reminded of it right now. Mr. Holden was clearly of a different mind to you. He inexplicably retrieved another $20 bill, rolled it up, raised it to Cove's face. Cove's eyes were hidden behind tightly clamped fingers, so Mr. Holden poked Cove's nose with the bill. Cove peeked between his hands and grunted as he saw what he had been prodded with. Even if it was surrounded by sobs, you were glad that something else had finally left Cove's mouth.
Come on.
Hey, Cove, can you stop crying? I'll give you this cash if you do. What is wrong with you, my dude? Cove dropped his hands from his face. It had already been red and wet with tears, but now his features were scrunched up in a scowl. Not for the first time, you questioned Mr. Holden's tactics. He had to use two hands, but Cove firmly shoved his dad's own hand away. But Mr. Holden just chuckled at Cove's reaction and tossed the money aside. It unfurled as it flew through the air, rising before slowly drifting to the ground. My sweet baby, no! Mr. Holden took Cove's outstretched wrists and lowered them to Cove's sides, stopping him from hiding his face again. Cove's dad clearly wasn't going to let go. Huffing, Cove turned his whole head away, tears continuing to roll down his cheeks as he glowered at the ground. You can buy a lot of cool things with that, but it can't do everything, can it? Cove didn't respond, not even to look at his father. Mr. Holden continued. Your old dad likes to make things nice for you with the money he earns. But you're smart. You know that I haven't really done anything.
I'm sorry.
I still make you upset and sad, just like right now. I'm sorry. Cove sniffed, the harsh line of his brow mellowing. Mr. Holden squeezed Cove's hands as he continued. Franklin is smart too, right? Mr. Holden spoke in a soft, encouraging tone, and Cove continued to calm. You have nothing to worry about. Except for me. Mr. Holden chuckled. Cove pressed his lips together, mulling over his father's words. Though the stream of tears had eased, drops still budded in his eyes and threatened to spill out. I love you, son. So much. More than anybody else. Sometimes that makes me a little too hasty to see you happy, and I make it all worse. I really am sorry. Scrunching his eyes tight, Cove nodded. When his eyes opened again, they were red and glossy, but there were no tears left on the precipice of his lower lashes. Aside from the occasional sniff, he was mostly back to his usual self. He swallowed. Okay. Though Cove had refused to echo Mr. Holden's exact words, the sentiment seemed to be enough for his dad. He moved his hands up under Cove's armpits and hoisted Cove high into the air with a grin. Cove's hands flew to his glasses, holding them back from falling off. Cove's lips were shut tight, all betrayed by the telltale smile in his eyes that he was trying hard to hide. Mr. Holden laughed, lowering Cove so that he was securely pinned against his chest. Cove looked away, face angled to the ground. Now that his dad could no longer see him, he was allowing himself to smile. Mr. Holden might have missed it, but you didn't. Cove wriggled, pushing a hand against his dad's shoulders. Can I go back down now? Yeah. Mr. Holden set Cove gently to the ground, waiting until his feet found their footing before releasing him entirely. I have to do something. Wait here. As Cove wandered away, Mr. Holden's gaze stuck to him like glue. You sighed, eyes downcast. You felt weird that you'd only been able to stand there while the event unfolded. You weren't able to fix it. I couldn't make him feel better. Don't worry about it. Please. We don't need another tragedy today. He winked, and you weren't impressed. Hey, I mean that. The first part, anyway. There's only so much you can do to try fixing someone else's mistake. He smiled sincerely at you. You've done plenty for Cove. Just the fact that you were honest with him when his own dad wasn't proves it.
That's a relief.
Yes! Thanks for being such a good kid. I hope you'll keep spending time with the boy. As though the sound of his name summoned him, Cove returned, clutching the bill his dad had cast aside earlier. You cocked your head, and Cove's dad raised his eyebrows. Cove looked at the crumpled note, then walked over and held it out to you. I stopped crying, but I don't want this. You can have it. He gave you a small smile. Behind him, Mr. Holden was still watching Cove closely, clearly relieved. You shared the feeling. Cove was making peace with the deal that had happened behind his back. I'm not taking it. Shaking your head, you push the note back to Cove. I don't need it. But I don't want it. You were at a stalemate. Mr. Holden hummed thoughtfully. Tapping his head, he gazed up at the wide sky as he pretended to give the conundrum serious consideration. I know. He plucked the bill from Cove and tore it right in two. You and Cove gasped in unison. Dad, we can't do anything with it now. True, it won't work at the store like this, but now you can split it. Crouching down, he held out the pieces to you and Cove. You both looked at the two halves. Neither of you reached for them. It still has value, as a keepsake, a memory. And that's one of the most valuable things you can use money on.
So,
It sounds pretty great, huh? Maybe I'm getting smarter. Wordlessly, Cove stretched out a hand and took his half. You took yours, running a finger along the jagged edge of the bill. It was cool to think that no other note would share this exact same feature. The precise peaks and troughs of the tear, except for Cove's, which would bear them in reverse. It did feel like there was value left in it. Cute. Mr. Holden stood up, stretching his arms out casually. Well then, it's about time for dinner. Me and the Rugrat need to be going in. You should probably too. I bet your moms want to see you. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
thanks very much.
Have a good night. And thanks, Franklin. Father and son waved at you and as you turned and dashed back home, the note clenched tightly in your hand. You felt lighter. That was sweet. That was sweet, and I'm glad I was honest. I was so worried there for a while that I was like, did I ruin everything by being honest? Is Cove gonna hate me now? Is Cove gonna hate me because I told him the truth? But the thing was that I didn't take the money. I just wanted to be friends. That's the whole point. Yes, your dad is a piece of shit. But I still like you for you. Anyways, that's all the time we got for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I'm having a great time. If you like this, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see more, hit subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.